This is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
In this hour's news package, we will explore top stories from across the continent, from groundbreaking summits and cinematic triumphs to call for peace. Good evening and welcome to Pulse of Africa, the heartbeat and true voice of our continent. I'm Philander and I will be bringing you the stories that matter. Let's start with African Social Media Influencer Summit. Ethiopia will host the inaugural African Social Media Influencers Summit, ASMIS, a landmark Pan-African event designed to unite the continent's most influential digital voices with media organizations, policymakers, and private sector leaders. A press briefing was provided today by the co-organizers, Pulse of Africa and the Agatic Enterprise. The summit is scheduled for May 7 to 8, 2026 at the Adwa Victory Memorial Museum in Addis Ababa. To be staged under the theme, Influence for a Better Africa, ASMIS promises to be a major platform for discussions on innovation, technology, and responsible digital engagement. POA coordinator Barakat Sisai highlighted that the summit will focus on Africa's rapidly evolving digital landscape, particularly the growing role of AI in content creation. ASMIS provides a forum to discuss ethical innovation and technological potential to amplify Africa's narrative, he said.
The growing influence of digital media is by now it's apparent. It is surfacing like we have been seeing at a global level, at the continental level. So at the same time, the advent of the AI, because AI or the artificial intelligence also making some stride in terms of shaping the digital content creation. So we really want to bridge a link between digital media influence and then the use of artificial intelligence in this summit.
The event will bring together more than 200 social media influencers from across Africa and the global diaspora, whose combined reach spans hundreds of millions. Participants will engage in workshops, discussions, and networking opportunities aimed at promoting state sustainable development, digital governance, and strategic partnership between creators and the private sector. The summit will feature hands-on AI workshops, sessions on using digital platforms to showcase Africa's progress, opportunity to connect influencers with businesses, and discussions on shaping the continent's digital engagement. Bayush Mamo, ASMIS's coordinator, added that with Africa's digital ecosystem expanding rapidly, ASMIS will help ensure the continent's digital future is innovative, impactful, and collaborative. She also announced that official registration will open soon, encouraging creators, influencers, and industry stakeholders to visit www.asmis.org for updates. Forward-thinking brands and organizations are invited to partner with ASMIS to reach Africa's most influential digital voices and contribute to shaping the continent's digital and creative future. The award-winning UK-Nigeria film begins a North America rollout starting March 6, 2026, following its premiere at the Pan-African Film Festival. It's expanding Nollywood's footprint globally with strong action drama appeal. Following its US premiere and selection at the Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles, the film will debut in theater across key cities including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, Houston, Washington, D.C., and Indianapolis, with plans for additional major markets later on. This theatrical launch marks a significant step in the film's international expansion, allowing North American audiences to enjoy its dynamic storytelling on the big screen. The release strategy will emphasize metropolitan and diaspora markets, featuring community screenings and targeted promotions to drive positive word of mouth. In tandem with its US theatrical rollout, Son of the Soil began streaming on Netflix across Africa on March 1, 2026, making the gripping film accessible to millions. This Netflix release marks a pivotal moment for the film, expanding its reach beyond theaters and festivals as it taps into the growing global interest in quality African-led narratives. Directed by Chi Kweng-chong, Son of the Soil centers on Zion Ladejo, a former Nigerian special ops paratrooper who, following his sister's tragic death, becomes embroiled in a vicious struggle against organized crime. The film seamlessly blends intense action with emotional resonance, garnering acclaim for its authentic storytelling, cinematic ambition, and powerful performances. The entertainment industry continues to mourn veteran actor, comedian, and playwright Soli Philander, who passed away at 65 after battling cancer. Tributes highlights his massive contribution to South Africa's storytelling on stage and screen. The entertainment industry is mourning the death of former television and radio personality and community worker Soli Philander, who passed away on Wednesday, March 4, at the age of 65. Tributes have been pouring in, with many remembering him as more than a comedian, actor, and presenter. Philander was celebrated as a storyteller who used his art and humor to reflect shared humanity and contribute to shaping democracy. African policymakers and peace and security experts have called for stronger collective action to address growing instability across the continent, warning that Africa is facing an increasingly complex security environment marked by expanding conflicts and humanitarian crisis. The call came during a high-level policy dialogue organized by Amani, Africa Media and Research Services in Addis Ababa, following the outcomes of the 39th Ordinary Session of the African Union Assembly. The event examined how the African Union can strengthen its peace and security architecture to respond more effectively to current crises. Talking to Pulse of Africa, Philander, founding executive director of Amani Africa, said the continent is experiencing a critical moment. Africa is entering a new era of responsibility and instability characterized by expanding armed conflicts, deepening state fragility, and worsening humanitarian crisis, he said, stressing the need for stronger continental leadership and coordinated action to protect peace and stability. According to Amani, Africa's 2025 review of the AU Peace and Security Council, several conflicts hotspots continue to drive insecurity across the continent, including the ongoing war in Sudan, escalating violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, persistent insurgencies in the Sahel, and political tensions in South Sudan. Solomon noted that one of the key opportunities emerging from the recent AU summit is the proposal to hold an extraordinary summit on peace and security in Luanda, Angola later this year. There is an important opportunity if the extraordinary summit is used for focused engagement on major conflict hotspots and how to contain them, he said.
There is an opportunity that is one of the most important outcomes of the summit that relates to peace and security, and that opportunity is the proposal for an extraordinary summit on peace and security that will be held in Luanda. And as such, if that is used for a focused engagement on these major conflict hotspots and how to contain and resolve these major conflict hotspots, then there is a possibility for changing the tide, particularly in terms of restoring the agency of the African Union, which is critical for Africa to take leadership on resolving conflicts on the continent.
Ambassador Liberta Mulamula, African Union Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, emphasized that strengthening peace and security must remain a top continental priority. Peace and security must remain central to Africa's development agenda, she said, adding that inclusive peace process and stronger preventive diplomacy are essential for sustainable stability.
This peace, it has our primary responsibility. Based on the already normative frameworks, we have enough legal instruments. We have the Constitutive Act. So now we say we have to move from declarations to action, commitments to action. There's so much suffering of our people in the conflict areas that we have mentioned. So it is time that we have to mobilize the important political will to mobilize our own resources, because the world is not there for us, for Africa. We have to take up this primary responsibility and ownership of the peace, security we want, but also to be part of the architect of the African we want, the Agenda 2063.
Experts at the forum also stressed the importance of strengthening the African peace and security architecture, APSA, and ensuring sustainable financing for peace operations as the continent seeks to address its growing security challenges. Tanzania's safari capital, Arusha, is gearing up to host a major Pan-African sporting and cultural festival in May 2026, with organizers expecting more than 5,000 participants from across Africa and beyond for the second edition of the Cape to Cairo Arusha International Tourism and Cultural Festival. The week-long event, featuring an international marathon at Sheikh Amir Abdi Stadium, is strategically designed to boost intra-African tourism, promote cultural exchange, and strengthen Eastern African position as a unified travel and investment destination. The idea is to spur intra-East African community tourism, trade, and help leapfrog other economic sectors, explained Tim Mdinka, Chief Executive Officer of the Sports and Tourism Event Organization, and a veteran Tanzanian tour operator with Land Africa Safaris. The timing of the festival is particularly favorable as Arusha's global profile continued to rise. CNN Travel recently listed the city among the top 20 places to visit in 2026, one of only 2 African destinations to make the prestigious list alongside Algeria's Tassil and Anjer. Situated at the foot of Mount Meru, Arusha serves as a gateway to some of Africa's most celebrated wildlife destinations, including the iconic Serengeti National Park and the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, often referred to as the Garden of Eden and sometimes dubbed the world's 8th natural wonder. The city's tourism infrastructure is also expanding with the soon-to-be completed 30,000-seat Samia Suluhu Hassan Stadium, which was enhance the region's capacity to host major international events. Scheduled to run from May 28 to June 3, 2026, with the marathon taking place on May 31, the festival will extend beyond sporting competition to include cultural performances and a high-level summit bringing together business leaders and policymakers to explore opportunities for expanding tourism and investment across the East African community. Now let's turn to business news. The International Monetary Fund says discussions with authorities in Gabon have focused on strengthening economic reforms and maintaining macroeconomic stability. An IMF staff team led by Aliona Sibotari visited Libreville from February 25 to March 6, 2026 to hold technical talks with government officials on recent economic and policy developments. In a statement issued at the end of the visit, the IMF said discussions covered the implementation of Gabon's National Growth and Development Plan, as well as reforms aimed at improving public financial management, governance, the business environment, and the fight against corruption. The IMF noted that prudent fiscal and financial policies remain essential to safeguarding macroeconomic stability in Gabon and the wider region. The IMF says policy dialogues with the Gabonese authorities will continue in the coming weeks, including during the upcoming IMF spring meetings. Time for sports news. Confederation of African Football has released the official dates and kickoff times for the quarterfinals of the Total Energy CAF Confederation Cup, with matches set to take place across Africa from 14 to 22 March. One of the headlines ties features a Moroccan derby between Olympique Club de Safi and Wydad AC, with the first leg scheduled in Safi on 15 March before the return match in Casablanca on 22 March. Egypt's Al-Masri SC will face Algeria's CR Belouizdad, while another Egyptian giant, Zamalek SC, travels to take on Congolese side AS Otto in their opening leg on 14 March. In another quarter-final encounter, Democratic Republic Congo's AS Maniema Union will host Algeria's USM Alger before the decisive return leg a week later in Algeria. The quarterfinals will be played over 2 legs, with aggregate winners advancing to the semi-finals scheduled for 10 to 12 April and 17 to 19 April. The 2 legs final of Africa's second-tier club competition is set to take place in May as teams battle for continental glory. Finally, Burkina Faso has appointed former Comoros and Mauritania coach Abdou Amir to the men's team and entrusted him with qualifying for the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations. The 53-year-old Amir was presented by the president of the Burkinabe Football Federation on Wednesday, ending what the federation described as a rigorous examination of candidates to replace Brahma Traoré. Traoré was fired in January after the team's disappointing Africa Cup in Morocco, where the Stallions were knocked out in the round of 16 by Ivory Coast. Amir, who was previously coach of Hassanian Agadir in Morocco's top division, is known for his tactical nous and for forging discipline teamed with strong defenses. The federation said the team's performance in Morocco caused deep disappointment among supporters, stakeholders in national football and governing bodies. Amir led island nation Comoros to the knockout stages of the 2021 Africa Cup and enjoyed a successful tournament with Mauritania at the following edition in Ivory Coast. Burkina Faso also went out in the last 16 of those tournaments, but the Stallions reached the semi-finals of 2021 edition, where they lost to eventually champions Senegal. Let's take a look at the weather forecast across the continent. That concludes our new coverage for today. Next up is our weekly program, The Notables. Please stay tuned and watch. Thank you so much for joining us on Pulse of Africa, your trusted source for news from the continent. To continue receiving our coverage and in-depth analysis of the stories shaping tomorrow, please subscribe to our channel and follow us on all social media platforms. Goodbye.
They shaped history. They inspired generations. They are the Notables. Join us as we honor Africa's greatest minds and trailblazers, the Notables, celebrating Africa's icons.
Across the modern international system, there are figures whose influence operates quietly, but whose decisions shape policies that affect billions of lives. They're not always presidents or prime ministers. Often they work in the spaces between governments, translating ambition into global action. In this episode of the Notables Show, we turn to one of the most influential development leaders of our time, a diplomat, policymaker, and global strategist who has spent decades helping shape the world's development agenda, from Nigeria's environmental reforms to the highest levels of the United Nations. This is the story of Amina Jane Mohammed and how her work helped design the global blueprint for sustainable development in the 21st century.
Global development does not begin with projects. it begins with language. Before roads are built, before forests are protected, before policies are implemented, there must be a shared understanding of what progress actually means. For much of the 20th century, development was measured narrowly. Economic growth, industrial expansion, rising GDP. Progress was something that could be calculated in numbers alone. But by the early 21st century, the world was beginning to understand that prosperity without sustainability was a fragile achievement. Growth could lift economies, but it could also exhaust ecosystems, deepen inequality, and destabilize societies. The world needed a new vocabulary of progress, and within that conversation, Amina J. Mohammed emerged as one of its most important translators. Amina J. Mohammed's story begins not in a global institution, but in the complex political and environmental landscape of Nigeria. Born in 1961, she grew up in a country defined by immense opportunity and equally immense challenges. Nigeria possessed vast natural resources, a rapidly growing population, and enormous economic potential. Yet it also faced environmental degradation, infrastructural gaps, and the difficult task of balancing development with sustainability. Her early works focused on practical development challenges, urban planning, environmental management, and sustainable policy design. Rather than approaching a development as an abstract theory, she encountered it as a lived reality, where policy decisions directly affect communities, ecosystems, and livelihoods. This grounding would later define her approach to global policy making. Development must not exist not only in documents, it must work on the ground. By the early 2000s, environmental governance had become one of Nigeria's most pressing policy arenas. Rapid industrial growth, oil extraction, deforestation, and urban expansion were placing enormous pressure on ecosystems. Amina J. Mohammed stepped into national leadership as Nigeria's Minister of Environment, where she began pushing for policies that integrated economic development with environmental protection. Her approach reflected a growing global realization development and sustainability were not opposing forces. They were inseparable. Protecting forests meant protecting livelihoods, managing water systems meant protecting agricultural and food security. Environmental policy was not just about nature, it was about human stability. Her work in Nigeria placed her firmly within an emerging generation of development leaders who understood that the future of growth would be defined by sustainability. But the stage for that conversation was about to expand dramatically. In the early 2010s, the international community faced a pivotal transition. The Millennium Development Goals, launched in 2000, had helped focus global attention on poverty reduction, health, and education. But they were approaching their 2015 deadline. A new global framework was needed. This time, however, the ambition was far greater. Instead of focusing only on developing countries, the world would create a universal development blueprint. One that addressed poverty, climate change, inequality, governance, and sustainability simultaneously. Amina J. Mohammed was appointed Special Advisor to the UN Secretary-General on post-2015 development planning. Her task was formidable: help coordinate negotiations among nearly 200 nations, each with its own priorities, interests, and political realities. What emerged from this process would become one of the most ambitious global policy frameworks ever created. In 2015, after years of negotiations and diplomatic efforts, the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the United Nations. 17 goals, 169 targets, a roadmap designed to guide global development through the year 2030. The SDGs expanded the meaning of development, ending poverty, achieving gender equality, ensuring access to clean water, protecting life below water and life on land, building sustainable cities, strengthening institutions. These goals were not merely technical guidelines, they represented a new philosophy of global cooperation, one that recognized that economic prosperity, social justice, and environmental sustainability must advance together. Amina J. Mohammed played a central role in shaping the framework and guiding the negotiations that made the agreement possible. The result was a document that today influences development strategies across governments, international institutions, and civil society organizations worldwide. In 2017, Amina J. Mohammed was appointed Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, one of the highest positions within the global organization. From this platform, she has helped oversee the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and coordinate international responses to some of the world's most complex challenges: climate change, global inequality, humanitarian crisis, post-pandemic economic recovery. The work is rarely visible in dramatic headlines. It unfolds in negotiations, policy frameworks, and long-term institutional planning. But its influence is profound, because global development today depends not only on national leadership, but on the ability of international institutions to coordinate collective action. In this sense, Amina J. Mohammed's role is less about commanding power and more about orchestrating cooperation. Amina J. Mohammed represents a different model of leadership, not the charismatic revolutionary, not the traditional statesman, but the institutional architect, a leader who works within complex systems to align governments, organizations, and global agendas toward shared goals. Her career reflects a broader transformation in global governance. In the 21st century, some of the most important decisions about humanity's future will not be made solely within national capitals. They will emerge from networks of international cooperation where diplomacy, science, economics, and environmental policy intersect. Within that landscape, leaders like Amina J. Mohammed played a critical role, translating global ambition into practical framework for action.
Amina J. Mohammed's work rarely unfolds in the spotlight, yet the frameworks she helped shape, from sustainable development to environmental governance, are influencing policies in the countries across the world. Her career reminds us that leadership does not always come from the loudest voice or the most visible platform. Sometimes it comes from the ability to design the systems that allow global cooperation to happen. And in an era where humanity's greatest challenges are shared across borders, that kind of leadership may be more important than ever. Thank you for watching. This has been The Notable Show, brought to you by Pulse of Africa.
They shaped history. They inspired generations. They are the Notables. Join us as we honor Africa's greatest minds and trailblazers, the Notables, celebrating Africa's icons.